everybody. I'm Nicastro, CMSWire Managing Editor here with CMSWire Contributor, a familiar face for you folks, a familiar name in the byline, Greg Kihlstrom. Greg, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Happy New Year.
You too, you too. So, yeah, we're catching up over your latest book, which is the subject of today's column on CMS Wire, and we're getting a little detailed here and going beyond the column to talk more through the concepts of the book. So the book, exciting stuff, out this January, and it's Priorities Action: 7 Principles for Better Strategies, Decisions, and Outcomes. So let's just start from the very beginning and say, what was the impetus behind the book?
Yeah, so I've written a few books now on, very specifically on marketing, MarTech, customer experience and things. And so, this is really my first book that didn't originate specifically on those topics, but yet it can definitely apply to those and more. And so really it was inspired by I work in addition to writing and speaking and some other things. I work as a consultant and advisor to companies, and I spend a lot of time working on strategy and defining priorities and all those things. And then what often happens is we come up with this amazing list of priorities, and then reality kind of sets in. And I hear from a lot of people. I have a podcast as well. I talk with a lot of leaders too of we come up with these amazing priorities as part of our strategy, and then as I said, as reality sets in, we kind of come back down to earth, and some of those things are really just bullet points in a PowerPoint deck somewhere, and we may revisit those from time to time. But what I really wanted to write about is how do we turn these things from those bullet points in a PowerPoint to things that we act on, and how do we kind of wrap our heads around the mindset of just simply saying something as a priority doesn't make it so. It's that we act on it, and more so we follow through on it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Because those initial objectives that you set are everyone's so passionate behind them, and they mean well. They're things that the company might need, your team might need. And you're right, they just fizzle or they just fade away. So it's like really how to keep up that momentum from those initial ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are 7 principles in the book, and, I won't go through all of those right now, but, there's a few things that I think are probably going to resonate with a lot of people sitting out there. But, the first one I talk about is everything can't be the most important thing. So in other words, we have to, you would think priorities would mean that we rank order things, and we actually decide what's important. But when it comes down to, leaders are struggling to do more with less these days, and to try to juggle a lot of those competing priorities. But we have to actually make something the most important thing, and and call it, and then follow through with it. And so I go through things like that to really just kind of help help guide people in the right direction.
Yeah. And one of the things you stress is, the importance of action over that mere verbal prioritization. How can like as CMS Wire, we talk to a lot of marketers, a lot of customer experience leaders. So when you're thinking of those folks specifically, how can they effectively translate their strategic priorities into concrete action? Because I know you set those marketing plans, everything looks great. Q1, we're going to hit this. Q2, we're doing that. So how do you put those kind of things into concrete actions, especially in the context of digital transformation and AI?
Yeah, I mean, so I separate priority into actually 3 steps. And so the first step is what you would think it would be. It's actually making a priority list. And so again, that's where everybody starts. But that's where a lot of people end as well, because
But I made
again,
the list.
right. Because they get
Not
an email.
enough.
Right. The second step is like making the decision, and the conscious and the verbal, and the decision to act. But the last step is following through. I call it action. And so again, it's surprising how few priorities actually make it all the way through to those steps. When again, I think there's a lot of things going on too. There's a lot of talk about employee, lack of employee engagement, and such a focus on the employee experience. Well, some of what's driving that is they keep hearing leaders and others saying, well, this is what we value, and this is what we want to do, and this is what we're gonna do, but they don't see that action on it. And so, it's there's a lot to do with customers and that end customer experience and customer value, but there's also those internal teams. They're the ones seeing those PowerPoints with the bullet points on them, and continually seeing them, and kind of seeing the lack of action. And so, when an internal team starts saying, oh wow, they prioritize that, and we actually did it, and we're making meaningful progress towards those goals, that's a win-win, and probably a third win for the customer too.
It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling when you can go back to a list of something you said in the workplace and demonstrate how you fulfilled that. That is like magical. Even if it takes you a whole year,
Right.
let's demonstrate some ways we have actually done that,
Yeah, well, and that's another thing that I talk about is it doesn't mean that you have to complete every single priority. Action on a priority could be incremental progress. I mean, I'm a huge, my podcast, it's called the Agile Brand. I'm a very, agile, iterative, kind of person, and I counsel my clients to work in that way as well. So, it's not that you have to finish something completely to call it action. It's that you need to do something, though, to make that incremental progress. It needs to be visible progress, and it needs to feel like progress too, not only for you as a leader necessarily, but also for your employees, and ideally for your customers, are feeling like their feedback and their actions are creating a feedback loop, and something actually happens when they give you feedback.
Yeah, right. The book also, talks about myths that hinder high functioning teams. Can you think of some of those common ones, particularly for marketing teams or customer experience teams that they encounter often, and regarding setting and implementing priorities and how they can kind of overcome those?
Yeah, I mean, one that comes to mind, and again, one that this was inspired by real life scenarios for me, is trying to be everything to everyone is also not possible. Just like I mentioned, everything can't be the most important thing, but you also can't be everything to everyone. So prioritizing who you're reaching to, and what is going to make the biggest impact that we do, that will also help you to prioritize. And if you can make your priorities a little narrower, it's a lot more likely you're going to be able to get started on them first, and then follow through as well. So there's things like that really that really make the difference between again, saying things and doing and following through.
Yeah, that's one way to lose a team too, with like leaders and managers, is to have a pep talk about things, you're
Right.
going to get going on. And it's almost like I feel like managers and leaders have to resist the urge to be overly promised, right? To be
Yeah.
overly promising, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, they got to step back a bit.
Yeah, well, and even maybe even on the flip side of the first myth is, another myth I explore is that quitting is always bad. Also, so sometimes not doing something, or stopping something is the right decision. You made a priority, but you realized you got the data, you got the information back, and you realized, okay, well, you know what, that was a priority, but let's communicate this out to everyone and say, you know what, we tried it, we experimented, we have the kind of culture where we can try things. And I don't like to use the word failure, because I think as long as you learn something, it's certainly not. I think the only time you fail is when you do something and you don't learn from it. So, sometimes stopping doing something, even if it was a priority, is the right thing as well.
Yeah, and I think that gives a confidence to a team too, that says, "Hey, we can look back and admit that what we said in January didn't translate, 6 months later,
Yeah.
but because of that, now we're exploring this opportunity, and we're going to leave that one aside for now." So I
Yeah.
think I think that's a great morale booster to have a leader, or a team leaders in a marketing department and a customer experience department that can just say these customer expectations are not what we thought.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that it's good, one of the terms for, psychological safety, to have that within, within an organization means, yeah, people can try stuff without the expectation that it's going to be perfect because, guess what? Nothing is perfect. It's
Yeah.
just it gets iteratively better over time, ideally, and
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't. And you need to be, you need to be courageous enough and have the support from your leaders and your teams to be able to say, when is when, basically.
Yeah, it's something just happened to me today with that. We were brainstorming some articles for a particular freelance writer for CMSWire, and I said, this one I'm not seeing the interest. It's kind of wound down a bit. It was this particular topic was hot in the summer, but look at Google Trends now. It's telling you that it's not hot. So let's skip this one. And Greg, I swear, as I was saying this whole thing to this freelancer, I said, I could be dead wrong on this. This article could kick off,
Right.
if I let the person do it.
Yeah.
And I'm keeping an open mind because if down the road that particular topic comes back, I'm gonna sign that story to that
Yeah.
freelancer. Hey, remember what I said in January? I was off. It's back, so
Yeah.
the ability to kind of pivot like that is huge. Um, looking lastly, Greg, can you kind of elaborate on how, marketing customer experience leaders should approach the meaningful measurement of their strategies and actions? Because there's a lot of ways to measure what you say. Believe me, I'm measured every day by the content we put out at CMSWire. So, how do you kind of ensure that the actions taken are not just busy work, but genuinely contributing to the company's growth and customer satisfaction?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because, one of the other things that I talk about is, simply making progress towards something isn't necessarily, I know I said, making some progress can be good, but doing busy work, is not, on some tangent is not necessarily gonna translate into something unless you can measure it. So, when I think about meaningful measurements, I think, there's there are there's data and there's analytics that help a person at a very tactical level do their job a little bit better, and so they can look at those things and maybe at a very low level understand, okay, things are kind of moving in the right direction. But meaningful measurement needs to tie back to a few things. I mean, one, it's got to tie back, as long as you're in a, probably even a nonprofit, but as long as you're in a for-profit company, it's got to tie back to business value of some kind. And generally that's going to be revenue, of some revenue generation, or revenue cost saving, something of that sort. It's also got to connect to some kind of customer benefit, so some kind of customer lifetime value or benefit to the customer over time. And if you can't do that, first of all, you're not going to be long-term successful in that, because, you're going to have a short-term, like, we call them vanity metrics, something goes up, but it has no meaning. So, that's not going to last very long, but also it's not going to get continued investment if you can't justify that it's good for the business and good for customers, and ideally both.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what you're saying resonates so. It's odd that we're talking this week because a couple things happened that resonates with what you were just saying. For me, we have some metrics in terms of how many contributors like yourself we want to grow, right, each month and all that.
Yeah.
Of course, we look at that, and you should look at that. Um, but in our conversations with some potential contributors, there are so many side benefits that come from those conversations, even if a particular person doesn't have the time to write for us, something like that.
Yeah.
So I've been tracking that so closely now, like making myself after those phone calls document what was said.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this person might not write for us, but I'm going to be going to a Boston customer experience professional group later this month because that's what we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's going to happen in that meeting when I go down there? I'm going to meet some people. I'm going to get some CX story ideas. And guess who's going to benefit from that? Our readers, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those tangible, yes, metrics and analytics are good, keep us honest, but the tangible, the things that you can't measure are also super important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
All right. Well, one more time, the book is out. Priority is action, 7 principles for better strategies, decisions, and outcomes. We'll have a link We have a link in this article to the Amazon. Is Amazon probably the best
Yeah.
place to track
Yeah.
it down? Okay.
Yeah, that's the best place.
So we'll do that. And yeah, look forward to many more conversations about this topic. Greg, I know our readers appreciate it. So thanks for joining us once again on CMSWire.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right, have a good one. Talk soon.
Thanks.
Bye now.